Ehi, ehi.
Uno, due, tre. Pierluigi, sono pronto per cominciare? Sono pronto, faccio 2 avvisi e facciamo vedere il filmato. Ciao, ciao, ciao. Cominciamo. Buongiorno, buenos dias, good morning. Buongiorno. Buenos días a todos. Esta mañana hablaremos en español. Ahora vamos a hablar en español. Queridos amigos, bienvenidos al segundo día de nuestra conferencia sobre la comunicación. Y ahora vamos a ver 2 minutos del video resumen de ayer. Sí.
Si parla sempre di più dell'intelligenza artificiale, sappiamo come un attacco informatico può paralizzare oggi il mondo. Allo stesso tempo sappiamo come fa molto più facile possibile la connessione mondiale.
¿Qué tal? Mi nombre es Iván, estoy aquí emocionado de estar en este congreso sobre comunicación, también para aportar a mi inspectoría de origen una nueva forma de evangelizar, una nueva forma de estar en comunicación.
Hoy es un día un poco más tranquilo. Dos conferencias antes del almuerzo y después iremos a la sala stampa, sala prensa, sala stampa y Radio Vaticano, Radio Vaticana. Anoche
This afternoon we are going to the
la
press
conexión a
room.
internet y el
Yesterday
auditorio se pusieron
evening
puntos
we
de
solved some
six
technical
access
problems.
points.
We improved the
Vamos a
internet
ver,
connection
veremos si
of
hoy
the auditorium.
funcionará un poco
And
mejor.
let's see if
Cuando
today it's
publiquen
going
en
to
las
work a
redes
bit better.
sociales, recuerden
When you
hashtag
publish on a
shaping
social
tomorrow.
network
All the time.
any type of
Shaping
content,
tomorrow.
remember the
Shaping
hashtag
tomorrow,
shaping
Instagram,
tomorrow.
Twitter, Facebook.
So
Hashtag
always use
shaping
the
tomorrow.
hashtag on Twitter,
Y ahora tenemos ante nosotros por segunda vez
Instagram,
a la hermana
Facebook,
Xiskya con el tema
etc.
Buenas
So now,
prácticas de
for the second
evangelización
time, we
en las
have Sister
redes
Xiskya with the
sociales.
topic Good
Aplauso.
Evangelization Practices on Social Networks.
Muy buenos días, espero que hayan descansado bien.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a good rest yesterday.
Ayer estuvimos viendo hacia el público.
Well, yesterday we saw
Hicimos un poco
together
porque fue lo más
with a view towards the audience, how the audience sees us, and
hacia atrás.
so how
Ser misionero
they can see us,
no es
how
un
they
hobby.
can understand us.
Es una
Now,
misión
today
que
we
un
talk
trabajo
about
y una
digital
inversión de
missionaries, which is a
conocimientos,
mission
de
which
tiempo
requires
y de
an
personas.
effort, an investment
Entonces,
of
¿cómo
knowledge, of
podemos
time,
hacer? ¿Qué buenas
and
prácticas
people.
tenemos?
So, how
Vamos
can
a
we do
tener
that?
hoy
What are the
10
good
buenas
practices we
prácticas
have
y la última es la
available
mejor.
today? We will see 10 good practices, and the last one is the
Es una de
best.
las estrategias típicas de la red.
And
para
this is
retener a la
already
audiencia,
one
decir
of
que
the
la
typical
última
strategies
es la mejor.
of the networks
Entonces, seguro
to
por las
keep the
risas,
attention of the
sé
audience,
que lo han
saying that the last one is the best.
Así que
Of
bueno,
course, I see you're laughing and you have already recognized
poner en
this
la
practice.
pantalla aquí, no lo veo.
Can I see the screen, please? I cannot see the slides here
Bien,
in
lo
front of
primero
me.
es tener claro la meta. La meta,
So,
la primera
the first thing
saber la meta.
is to have a clear
Es
goal.
a largo plazo y muy
The first
general.
good practice is to know
Algo
our goal.
ambicioso.
It
Es
is
el
important to
sueño
have
al
it
que
at
aspiramos,
long term,
que puede ser
something
una
general
meta
and very
tan
ambitious.
general como
So the
transmitir
dream
el mensaje
we
de Jesús a
wish
jóvenes, ahí concretamos un
to
poco,
reach
conseguir
is
más
to
vocaciones a la
convey
vida
the message
religiosa,
of Christ
acompañar a
to
algunos
the youth, or
evangelizadores,
trying to
ofrecer
have
una imagen atractiva
more
de la
religious
iglesia,
vocation, to
educar en valores
accompany
cristianos a los
students in
jóvenes,
social
o,
networks,
por
offer an
ejemplo,
attractive
también
image of
la
the
meta puede
church,
ser la de
educate young people to
conectar
Christian
con los
values,
más
or
alejados.
the
No la he ni siquiera puesto porque
goal might also be
la gente piensa
connecting
en esa parte.
with
por
those who
quería
are
decir.
far
Y en la
away.
meta
Sometimes
solo hay
we
que
don't
elegir
talk
una.
about
En las
this,
redes
we don't think
sociales
about
es
this,
lo más concreto,
and
lo
we
mejor.
must
Entonces,
choose
no podemos
a
ser tan ambiciosos de
destination,
abarcar
a
dos
target.
metas en un mismo
In
perfil.
social networks,
Cada
it
perfil
must be
tiene que
something
tener solo
concrete.
una
We
meta
cannot
a largo
think we can
plazo,
achieve two
general,
objectives on the
pero
same profile. Every
ambiciosa.
profile must
Un
have
único
one
perfil,
goal,
¿de acuerdo?
long-term goal,
Segundo,
general goal, and ambitious.
bueno,
So
primero
on
más bien,
just
porque
one
eso es lo general.
profile.
Definir objetivos muy claros.
So this
Y los
concerns the
objetivos
general
claros,
field. Then we have
en
to set
inglés
clear
se llaman
objectives,
SMART y en
and the
marketing
clear
se llaman
objectives
SMART. Son
in
objetivos
English are called
específicos,
SMART, and also in
medibles,
marketing are called SMART.
alcanzables,
They are measurable,
y en un tiempo
achievable,
definido.
relevant,
Estos objetivos
and
tienen que
defined in a
concretar
specific
cómo
time.
vamos a conseguir
These
la meta.
goals
Es decir, en
must
la meta tenemos algo muy general y a largo plazo.
have
con los objetivos
must let us have a concrete goal. So if we have a long-term goal with our objectives, we have to try and implement as much as possible. Then we have 4 SMART goals, for example, so increase our audience.
Por ejemplo, por poner
In order to achieve this goal, we have to increase the number. We have to be very specific. So increasing the number of Instagram followers, for example, and so we can be more specific. And so young followers between 15 and 25 years of age, for example, or something measurable. So how many followers in this time, something achievable. We cannot include among the goals something that cannot be achieved by using strategies with an attractive content and collaborations with Christian influencers or other influencers, people that have thousands of followers and that can help us. So this is one of the reasons.
Eso es relevante,
Increasing the relevance, the presence of the Christian message among the youth, because we have to be in line with our objectives and goal in a specific time, for example, 6 months. So, for example, 1,000 new followers in 6 months. This can be achieved if we do things well. So, 1,000 new followers can even come in 1 month if we do everything correctly. Another example of SMART goal is to increase the interaction with our followers, because the engagement is very important. So the interaction coming from the interaction with the users,
más allá de los que ya nos conocen en la vida,
improving our content so that they can achieve as many people as possible. So we have to decide to what extent where our projects have to go. How many SMART goals do we have for every profile in the account? It depends on the number of the people that are part of the team working on it. It depends on how many people are there and how much time they can dedicate to it, but it is important not to go beyond 3 or 4. It is better to have just one goal rather than having many goals that we cannot achieve. When teams are very big, then we can also have 4 SMART goals. I said it is not a hobby, it is a job, and it is a job which requires concrete time, efforts in many cases. In our religious life, usually we don't see this as a real job. We see the youth pastoral as a job. But for example, our superior have not understood the importance of the digital pastoral, and so it is difficult to have a specific time dedicated to this. We usually do this in our free time, but if we want to do this well and we want to see the fruits, we need more time. So we need to do things well. Another good practice, knowing our audience, we have to focus our message on a specific audience. We cannot say, everybody in general. No, this doesn't work. And it is important not to think about us, not to think about the audience. And this is a very Christian message. We have to get out our comfort zone. We have to get out our mindset in order to understand how the audience is made, our audience, because I have to create my contents depending on the audience I want to address. Of course, we will not speak Chinese to English, or vice versa. We have to use the right language for our audience. So the audience is very important, and understand. We have to understand as much as possible the behaviors, the ideas, the values, the tastes of this audience, what motivates them, what they do in their free time, because they will give us a lot of insights on the contents we have to create. Another important thing is to create as many data as possible. This action can be done manually, but it can also be done with the specific instruments. We can also require services of companies monthly or yearly, but let's say that it's very important to know our audience. For example, we can organize surveys to understand the age, the religion, the ideas, the type of content that you usually see on social networks, which are the most favorite content. So all this is important to know our audience. And then we have to analyze this data to divide them, to segment them. This means that not everything has to reach everybody. A specific profile might work for a specific audience. If I address remote people, then the profile has to be more specific. So, for example, young people who are far away. For example, yesterday during the coffee break, one of the interpreters told me I was one of them. I didn't know Jesus, but then I started to have a boyfriend. I had a boyfriend who decided to be baptized, and so I decided to get the baptism. So this is a reality. Maybe I said this, as someone said, "Oh, maybe this is not true," but these are real things, and these are the realities of the youth in Europe who don't know God because their parents don't tell them about God. They never heard of Jesus Christ. And so differentiating agendas or pastoral missions, and so differentiating them, knowing the audience is very important to differentiate the content depending on a type of group, on the type of audience. Then creating valuable content. Valuable content does not mean that it has to be valuable and relevant to me, but relevant for the youth who will follow us, for the audience, for the youth, but also for the adults, relevant for them and valuable for them, because it doesn't make sense to talk about the original sin in a video when it is something they don't know, in which they don't raise. The interesting aspect is to make them having doubts and questions about something that they would have never thought before. So this is something that characterizes religions. I know that also with Don Bosco something like that was done. A pastoral can be, for example, a good translation, a good catechesis, or a video. For example, we were commenting the Last Supper, so the video were showing me, or irrelevant content can be a funny video, a humor video. So I believe that Don Bosco was able to be a bit of a clown, just to attract the youth through catechesis. So sometimes we can do catechesis also on social networks. Sometimes you have to make a dance or you have to wear a wig just to attract. It depends on the audience and the content that we want to create. So, a valuable content for them, it must be something which interests them. So, of course, with evangelization basis, for example, we might educate, entertain, or solve problems and solve doubts. Are we healing their wounds? We might do a lot of things, but the important thing is that they are the protagonist. Then we can use different formats, not always the same format, especially on social network. TikTok, for example, only allows for videos. Now it is also adding photos, but we have seen they don't work much. Instagram makes it possible to have different formats, text, video, photos. You can use all of them, and we must never forget about the existential real peripheries. We should always remember those who are far away, those who live in the suburbs of the world, real and unreal. There are these realities, these people exist, and so in order to meet the needs of these realities, we have to think about them, especially there are several parts of the world where there are young people with destructured families, history of violence, abuse, and these are very important issues. So in social networks, the targets, the goals are very important. We need to know our audience, and it is important to create content, and we must plan the content. It is not something that you do randomly, because we must have a good planning, and we must not improvise, especially because if we are taking all this seriously, other people will come and they will see what we planned, we planned them, and maybe they can follow our work. We're trying not to repeat the same things. We're trying to follow all necessary steps to achieve our goals. So a calendar of content is needed so that we can create the content in one afternoon for the whole week, and so the rest of the week can be dedicated to responding people, to interacting with them, rather than creating contents, because we've already done it. Of course, we can more or less plan 80% of the contents. There is a theory that works very well. 20% will always be improvised because it is related to what happened. For example, the presentation of the Olympic Games has generated an incredible amount of content about what happened. We might not be aligned with this content, so there must always be a margin for improvisation that the reality provides us with. It is also important that the first 3 seconds in a video are the key, because if in these first 3 seconds we cannot hold the attention of the person, maybe the person will scroll down and will go to another content. And so the first 3 seconds are fundamental. Just as I started my intervention today, I will talk about 10 practices, and the last one is the best one. Of course, this is something which I chose to do, and creativity should help us to make these 3 seconds of the video to retain the attention of our audience. If it's a text, we're talking about the first sentence, the first paragraph, which is key. But you already know this because the communicators, especially journalists, do this very well. Maybe with the videos, we don't recall this very well, especially if the videos are short, because in a video the key point is the retention of the person. So the time the person uses to see the video or this type of content. I give you one example of a type of content calendar for social networks because it is something similar to what I do. I always remind you of my target. I always remember my target. I can say young people between 18 to 30 years of age, far from religion, far from faith, a TikTok video of maximum one video. It is what I want to do because for this type of profile, a video of more than 1 minute wouldn't work, even though TikTok allows for 10-minute video also. And then the content and so the keywords of the goal I want to achieve. The SMART goals have to be kept somewhere else. For example, in the testimony, I have to understand why it is important to believe. I have to help spirituality to grow, give testimony, achieving the peripheries. And an example is to make solution videos by doing hiking or any type of sport. I see, especially among you, how cheerful you are among yourselves. For example, if you perform an activity together, this is more attractive than any other content. Or, for example, give reason to faith, and so why it is important to believe, why it is important to believe in God in a minute. But if they don't know Jesus, of course, we need more efforts. Or 3 reasons why it is important to forgive. Yesterday, for example, I saw a video of Salesians who were pouring on themselves ice water on their body. Yesterday, we spoke about migrant refugees. It is important to talk about these topics without forgetting creativity. For example, you see here the topic of the past, the creation date, who's going to make it. So when there is a team, we have to understand who's going to make it, the publication date, and if it's already been done or not. We might add more columns, for example, the hashtags or the type of content, if we're talking about the format, for example. So if it is a video, a meme, a photo, a text, everything we want to add, we can add it to our calendar, because the more we make our planning concrete, the better it is. Then we have to optimize our content on every platform, because what we publish on Instagram is different from that I can publish on another platform, because Instagram speaks one language, Facebook speaks another language. Instagram audience is younger. On Facebook we have older people, and maybe we have an audience that is more interested in the youth groups, and so every content must be modified depending on the platform we are using. And then of course we have to use and exploit the main features of every platform. For example, in the past we didn't have stories on every platform. For example, on Instagram we didn't have stories, but now we do. Same for Reels. It doesn't make any sense to use the same format for all platforms. Here we have some examples of optimization, high quality images, well, in a good light, everyday stories, for example, with behind the scenes or specific hashtags, with dynamic contents, short movies, and everything which can create interaction. So the contents, just like with everything, the interaction is important because it is what creates engagement. 6 point, increasing interaction, the engagement. As we said, it is more important to have a high engagement ratio rather than a high number of followers. Because if I have an engagement of 25%, then it doesn't work.
Cuando está en menos de 2,5 es que lo estamos haciendo mal, que algo falla, ¿vale? Entonces, para crear engagement es clave siempre ir metiendo un call to action, es decir, una llamada a la acción, un CTA.
So, a call to action. A call to action can be in the middle of the content or at the end of it, or in both places. I recommend you put it in the middle of the content because not everybody reads the text until the end. So the call to action quite often it's a kind of produces shame, depending also on the country or the geographical area. However, the call to action, which is an invitation to people for people to make comments, to react to that post, should be in the middle of the post. It could be also a subtle call to action, such as, what do you think about it? It is something that has been studied. If you ask something, the audience responds to that call to action. Therefore, a call to action is quite fundamental. We're talking about social networks, so this immediacy is entailed within the social network. If you receive, so it is important also that if you receive a call to action, a commentary, you don't leave it unattended. Sometimes I receive messages, private messages on TikTok, and quite often I can't respond to all of them, and it is very unsettling when I meet people telling me, I sent you a message and you didn't reply. And I swear that I don't feel well when they tell me, but the point is that I'm alone, I don't have a communication team, so it's very difficult for me to respond all messages. Therefore, another way to foster engagement is asking people, what kind of topics would you like us to deal with? It is an effective call to action because usually people reply. Another way to foster engagement is by asking people, what kind of questions would you like us to answer? These types of call to action are extremely effective because you end up speaking about the things your audience is interested in. Other examples of it could be, what's your favorite chapter of the Bible? These type of questions generate engagement because people will immediately answer. Or tell us your name and tell us where you are watching us from. It may sound trivial, but it is extremely important. It is important because that person feels engaged, they can write their name, write where they're writing from, and then you can shoot a video where you say hi to these people who have answered. Moreover, other ways to foster engagement is inviting people to subscribe to your YouTube channel and to activate notifications. In order to measure and analyze performances and engagement, you can use analytics tools that are available in every social network. You can also use Google Analytics for your website. These tools are extremely important in order to see how many people land on your page coming from the social networks. So you should put your the bit.ly below the content. It is important to use this tool, Google Analytics, to see how many people, as I said, land on your web page coming from social networks. Same thing could be applied to Instagram. If on Instagram we are using a link that sends you to your web page, we can see how many people actually come from Instagram. If you have a web page and you do not advertise it on social networks, that web page is basically useless. We should not refrain ourselves to quantitative data. We should also you should also focus on
si el Espíritu Santo está actuando o no está actuando en ellos.
whether the Holy Spirit is
Sintiéndose identificados
interacting with our audience, whether people feel identified with our contents. And I'm referring to qualitative data. Qualitative data require for a high degree of work. They require other tools.
medir el sentimiento
We may measure
con respecto a nuestro perfil.
the sentiment people have towards our network, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative.
Siempre son más, casi siempre.
Quite often,
Un grupito de haters, pero
we will find a group of haters, of course. However, that's normal. If you have no haters, it means you are not at the same level of haters. Therefore, you have to
ajustar la estrategia.
make steps forward. Therefore, it means we have to adjust the strategy. We should not reject anybody.
Sé que esto no nos gusta a los demás.
I know
Sé que esto no nos gusta.
we at the pastoral care, we don't like it. This is something that is not liked by the religious, because it looks like I'm telling you something quite entrepreneurial coming from the corporate world. However, that's ideal to improve the way we work. It means that, of course, we need a team, a communication team. We can't do it from scratch. We can't work by ourselves.
Aquí pongo las variables que hay que tener.
In this slide, I'm showing you the variables you should take into account to assess the engagement for every social network.
Para los vídeos,
So what we have to look at, if we post on Facebook, if we share videos on Facebook, and the same applies to Instagram and TikTok. Perhaps TikTok is easier because it's just about videos.
y en YouTube lo mismo. En YouTube, además,
And the same applies to YouTube.
estadísticas
YouTube provides a plethora of statistics directly.
para medir el engagement.
These are the variables to measure engagement. How are they measured? How is it measured? It depends on the objectives we have. One of them is based on the current followers, and the other is about the scope of every post. These are the two formula applied to measure it.
Dividiendo
So we measure the engagement by dividing them for the total amount of interaction,
y lo dividimos entre
and we divide it by the number of followers
el plan de contenido.
if we want to improve the content plan, if we want to increase the level of conservation. Otherwise, we measure it by dividing it on the scope, that is to say, the total number of people who have viewed a certain post. That if we want, and that is the best possible way if we want the community to be interactive and more lively.
Otras fórmulas en las que
There are also other formula that measure interactions. And I'm saying so because
no
due to the algorithm,
un like que un
a like
y que un compartir.
has not the same value of a
Like o un
comment. What do you like the most, a like or a comment?
a la hora
A comment.
de hacer la suma de las interacciones,
So when you add up interactions,
un like. Por ejemplo,
we have to
a los comentarios
we have to make a difference between a like and a comment. So we have to attribute a way to. We have to weigh.
pero también
We have to weight comments and
los datos
likes,
cómo los vamos a medir
attributing one to
formas.
the value of one, for example, to likes, and the value of two to comments.
Cualitativo.
There are also other elements we have to measure when it comes to quality. The first one is about emotions and perceptions, so that
El sentimiento,
any
sobre todo para el inglés,
tool to measure sentiments
o también podemos medir a través
is
de encuestas.
measured. We can also carry out this measure throughout an interview. Such an interview could be done by us, but also by contracting an external company measuring that could measure private messages. With private messages and comments, we want to classify the topics in order to understand what are the topics that are more liked by people, whether they are moral, related to the doctrines and so on. We may also be interested in the perception, being it positive or negative, and in order to do so, we have to assess every comment. We could do it throughout a specific tool, but there are several specific tools, especially to measure the emotions. I would not recommend certain and when it comes to these tools to assess the emotions and the sentiment of people, I would only recommend tools in English, not tools in Spanish. They're not quite that good. We should also talk about working with missionaries and other priests and sisters. Collaborative intelligence is an enriching element. We should get out of our solution bubble, and we should reach out to other congregations. And the fact you have invited me is also a similar form of collaboration. When it comes to marketing campaigns and social network campaigns, it is very interesting to organize cooperations with other religious congregations and also with other associations such as Church in Need or Caritas. Such collaboration multiplies the scope and your audience. Moreover, if we join forces with important influencers, the scope of our work increases. So you should all get together and find an agreement to create something that engages the public. You come from several parts of the world, so you should really join together, perhaps by language or also by other criteria. This is what synodality means. It is joining forces in the spirit of communion. This is one of those elements synodality is all about, and I think that the digital mission helps synodality. We should make the most of the contents generated by our followers. We could perhaps write that all those posting a picture, all those posting a picture with the T-shirt both at the musical Sueño will participate into a raffle and possibly win a prize. These posts, these possibilities scale up the scope of our contents, the scope of our engagements. These are strategies that motivate people. We could perhaps say that we are gonna put in a raffle to tickets for the musical. So we have to make the most of the contents posted by users. Hashtag, the creation of hashtag and the use of hashtag. Well, there are hashtag search engines and hashtag generators. So I put a hashtag on Google and I ask Google to tell me the most relevant hashtags about certain topics. So Google shows these hashtags that I asked for. What works best is to use no more than 5 hashtags. 3 of them must be the most popular one that already exists, and 2 should be hashtags that are specific of our sector, because by doing so we can show the post to different domains and show also what we do. So we have to combine common hashtags with specific hashtags. Here you can see a few of them. Some of them are quite general, but we could also, as I said before, develop specific hashtags for us. And now I'm going to say something very important, because it is about Eucharist and unity. Yesterday I didn't say that because I wanted to say it today. Social networks entail risks. The risk of fame, the risk of being self-centered, the risk of feeling the coolest one in the room. And that's what an important author said in a book, it's about not feeling that good. That's the risk of the digital missionary. We, in the Catholic world, we've always been accused of being self-centered, and I believe that that's just a judgment. However, we have to acknowledge the existence of this risk. Therefore, what matters the most for digital missionaries, we should be accompanied by a spiritual guide. Communication experts should talk to a spiritual guide and pray for every content that is shared. It is important also that digital missionaries live in an actual community, not only in a digital community. And if they feel like they have to stop, they should stop. I have stopped for certain periods of time, and of course the algorithm punishes you for that, but it doesn't matter. It is also important that you disconnect at least, for example, once a week. You just use your mobile phone for phone calls. So you should plan your disconnections. It is also very important that you are linked to the church, that you feel with the church and with the Pope. The church is not about the hierarchy. It is about God. It's about the people of God walking together, looking for the will of God. Well, this is what I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias. Tenemos 8 preguntas.
Thank you very much. We have 8 questions. First question: what was your main original reasons, and how could you define your current objective? When I started studying journalism, I went for an internship at El Mundo, a Spanish newspaper, and while there, I realized that there's a high degree of atheism in journalism among journalists, and I felt that I wanted to communicate throughout my action and my work the power of God. Moreover, my father was a non-practicing Christian. He was a doctor, and then he became an atheist. That was quite striking for me. I used to talk to him. He was looking for God, and before he died, he did the confession, he did the communion, and he said that he believed in God. And these are the 2 main experiences that led me to approach people in need. This is why I went beyond my boundaries, my bubble, so to say. Second question,
Un evangelizzatore digitale
what is the difference between a digital evangelizer or an influencer? Well, first of all, the digital missionary
un testimonio. Además, el evangelizador
provides for a
de manera gratuita.
testimony.
Todavía ninguno.
We do it for free. We are not paid to be digital missionaries. We do not advertise brands. We promote God, basically. While an influencer is all about themselves, they are driven by fame, even though this doesn't apply to all influencers. They promote brands, fashion, landscapes, and that's not to be criticized. What is bad is that they may fall into superficiality, while digital missionaries should start their action, their work from the faith, and they should stay loyal to their mission. What is the meaning of what you said? The algorithm punishes you. Well, the algorithm praises you or punishes you. It praises you when it shows your contents to a broader audience, when it gives visibility to your contents, but it may punish you when, but it actually punishes you when it stops showing your contents. What does it depend on? It depends on the interactions only. When the algorithm sees that many people are interacting with a certain content, the algorithm shows the content to more people. First of all, it shows it mainly to your followers. Then, if the algorithm sees that there's a wide degree of interaction, it shows to a higher audience. And if there's more engagement, it shows to an even broader audience. Normally, thanks to the statistics, we see that your contents are viewed, of course, mainly by your followers, but also by other people. Third question. Yesterday, we only saw clergymen influencers, so to say. Well, we are wondering whether there are also sisters on the internet, on the social networks. I know. Well, you're right, and I could see it coming. I know there are two sisters. One of them is in Argentina. Before we had also Sister Selfie. These are the three most important digital influencers who are nuns. I don't have an explanation, but it may be that in our congregations we are more bitterly criticized. Quite often, what we sisters do is not seen very well by our congregations. We are highly criticized. And we actually organized a conference about it within the Union of United Sisters. I see too that there are more priests than nuns on social networks. I think that well, I think it is a matter of gender, and I believe that it's the male clergymen who are more exposed. Perhaps they're trying to protect us nuns from the risks of the social networks. There's another question. How can we even out the use of creativity with innovation, especially throughout AI and social networks tools for the purpose of evangelization, making sure that we keep the essence and the dignity of the gospel message. And within this context, how can we draw lessons from the opening ceremony of Paris when it comes to cherishing the fundamental values of our church? What a long question. I believe that I would never leave a content to artificial intelligence without control. Artificial intelligence can be a tool, it can be a help, it can open up certain horizons, it could give ideas, it can provide drafts, but we should not stick to AI only. Yesterday I showed you a song. The music was by artificial intelligence, but I wrote the lyrics. So there's a website, and the website also help you. The website I use for it could generate also the lyrics, but the lyrics was horrible. That's why I kept the music, but I wrote the lyrics. So we should always give our personal touch to whatever AI generates. As for the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, I was one of the first ones to say that was an attack to the religious feelings. I believe that art is something, and sometimes we may not like art. For example, I didn't like the zombie dance, but I understand that was art. However, attacking the religious feelings of millions of Catholics is different. Many people felt offended, and I believe that that we should always respect certain boundaries. There are boundaries, of course, and we should not go beyond them. Thank you very much. Don Ravagnani, an Italian digital missionary who started a collaboration with a portal of religious products. He presents sacred objects to cover up certain expenses. I believe he is a member of the diocese. He's a diocesan. I don't think it's a negative thing, but I would be accountable. I would declare that that's an advertising, and I would pay taxes on it. Otherwise, if we're not doing it, we are going against the law, and we get into trouble with the tax office. We should, well, I'm not against it, but I don't think that that's the right way forward. There are other ways to fundraise with the help of entrepreneurs, with the help of associations and institutions. So I'm not against it as long as these activities are accountable and law-abiding. You've mentioned the importance of speaking about existential peripheries. From this viewpoint, we've always had a kind of a taboo about certain topics, such as gender differences. What's the best possible way to eliminate this type of fear? We could all learn from Pope Francis. He welcomes everybody. He shows the love of God to everybody without missing out on the truth. And that's the difference between love and truth. With this type of social problems, we have to learn from the Pope. We have to tell people, love God's you. God loves you. Yesterday, I mentioned an experience. Well, there was this guy from Madrid. He was a follower of mine, and once he sent me a direct message, and he told me, I want to go to Mallorca and talk to you. And I said, there's no problem. So we met up one day and we spent 2 hours talking in a at a coffee shop, and I felt, well, maybe he just wants to hang out. And when we were about to say goodbye, I could feel that he wanted to say something he didn't dare to say when we were at the coffee shop. And eventually he told me, I'm gay. And I said, so what? And he answered, I don't know if God loves me. And I said, of course God loves you. He welcomes you. He hugs you. He started to cry, and he said, I went to do confession because I am gay. I never engaged into homosexual relationships. When I told the priest I was gay, he sent me out of the church, and I felt rejected. And I think that these attitudes are extremely negative. When you practice homosexuality, that's a sin. But we cannot reject homosexual people because gay people are loved by God. And the love of God is beyond our judgment. We do not know why a person is gay. We do not know what happened to this person. The Pope has never denied that homosexual intercourse are a sin. However, he says, who am I to judge them?
Tenemos todavía un minuto. Según tu
We
experiencia,
have one last question.
un perfil de Instagram para dar a conocer una vocación
Opening up
como
a
la mía,
profile
DDB,
on Instagram.
Volontari di Don Bosco,
What do you think about opening up an Instagram account about the Don Bosco volunteers,
gracias Javier.
VDB, volunteers of Don Bosco? Well, I can tell you about our experience. In our congregation, we have a general Instagram account where we publish any content, and when and when we post a picture of a sister, that content becomes viral. So a group of young sisters decided to open up an account about vocation. The point is that people see the word the vocation and then go away. Instead, when people see happy sisters sharing contents or engaging in certain activities or going to hike or working with the youth, these contents attract much more vocation than a specific account about vocation. I talked with the Jesuit congregation recently, and I spoke with the Jesuit congregation recently, and they told me that they have an Instagram account about vocation that is not working quite well. Therefore, on the stock of it, I prefer people to meet up with vocation in the real world than by being pushed by an Instagram account. I received many messages by young women telling me that they had a vocation, but very few of them had an actual vocation. Most of them are just looking for social promotion, and this is quite common within social networks.
Muchísimas gracias, hermana.
Thank you very much,
Hermana Xiskya.
Sister Xiskya. Thank you very much to all of you. Thanks for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for all the words
Mañana.
you share with me these days. She's going to be with us until tomorrow. And a message by Pierluigi: please don't watch the live conference on YouTube, please listen to the translation throughout your mobiles. People from Latin America should stay in the room because Ricardo has a special present for our guests from Latin America.
Nos vemos a las 11:30 aquí.
See you at 11:30. Let's break for our coffee break. Thank you.
Pronto, pronto, eccoci qua. Allora, ci stiamo preparando, mentre ci stiamo preparando, due o tre avvisi.
Hello. Welcome back.
Pronti?
Are you ready? Before we start, I have a couple of announcements for the audience.
In italiano.
The next presentation is going to be in Italian.
Non
First announcement.
Specialmente quando
Please, don't be late,
parte ogni sera.
especially when the bus leaves every night. And I'm telling you this because 4 or 5 people yesterday night were late, not telling you where they come from.
Alle 20:30 parte.
So please, at 8:30, our bus leaves. So don't have the rest of you waiting. After lunch, we're gonna leave here at 2 p.m. We're gonna go to the Vatican with 3 big coaches.
Andiamo tutti insieme.
Doesn't matter which one you get on to, we're all going together and getting back here together.
Responsabili saranno Ola,
The people in charge of it will be Ola, Dondarek, and myself. Marcin is, Marcin won't be here with you because he has to go to the airport this afternoon. We're going to leave here at 2 p.m. sharp.
Dove ci saranno le presentazioni e la Radio Vaticana.
We will go to the press room where we'll listen to presentations and also by Vatican News. At the press room, there are restrooms and there's plenty of water. As I said before, we'll go to Vatican News, to the Vatican Radio, to the press room. We'll visit the facilities. We're not going to go to the Basilica. And if you want to get to the St. Peter's Basilica tomorrow, we'll have to dress properly. No matter how you're dressed today, the dress code is an issue for tomorrow. Therefore, if we're all ready, are we ready?
Ditemi quando possiamo cominciare. Ditemi quando possiamo cominciare.
Please tell me when we are all ready to start.
Buongiorno a tutti di nuovo.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Fabio Bolzetta. We're now going to move on to the next presentation by Fabio Bolzetto, the Church in the Digital World and the Approach to New Technologies in the Communication of the Church. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today here in Rome? Are you enjoying your time?
So I will continue what has been dealt with yesterday, and we'll talk about the approach to new technologies in the communication of the church. Many of us wondered whether the digital that we know as an environment can be represented as a sixth continent to evangelize. Well, for sure, we know this very well. There was a strong change
ancora prima, perdonatemi, da
As a
Gutenberg
second,
a
so from
Zuckerberg.
Gutenberg
E
to
da sempre,
Zuckerberg,
dall'inizio,
and
dalla
since
prima
the beginning,
pubblicazione, la
since the
prima stampa
first
in
publication,
tipografia
since the
della
first
Bibbia, così vediamo come anche oggi
publication of
immersi
the Bible, so
anche
we see
nell'intelligenza
we have
artificiale,
seen also in the
viviamo e ci
challenge of
insegniamo. E molti,
artificial
devo dire la verità,
intelligence,
voi siete tutti
we
comunicatori
commit
delegati alla
ourselves. You're all
comunicazione dei salesiani
communicators
da tutto
responsible
il
for
mondo, ma
the
certo
communication of
qualcuno si
Salesians
è quasi sorpreso.
all over the world,
In
but
realtà la
someone has
presenza
been
della Chiesa
surprised.
digitale
Actually, the
deve
presence of the
assolutamente
church in the
sorprenderci,
digital
anzi il
must
contrario dovrebbe
surprise us.
sorprenderci una sua
Well,
assenza, perché
its absence
noi
should
dobbiamo
surprise
sempre
us
ricordarci
because
come
we must
pensate,
also
era il
recall
1990
that it was
quando il messaggio di Papa Giovanni
1990
Paolo
when the
II per
message
l'allora
of
giornata mondiale
John
delle
Paul
comunicazioni
II for
sociali
the Social
era proprio
Communication
dedicato
World
al
Day at that time
Vangelo,
was
il messaggio
dedicated
cristiano più
to the
attuale
Christian
sull'utilizzo
message in the
dell'informazione.
current
E qualche anno dopo sbancherà
IT culture. And a few
andrà a
years
vivere sul
later,
web, il sito ufficiale
it
della
went
Salesianità.
to the
Un
web, the official
mondo
web of the
variegato,
Holy See. So
molto
a
ampio,
diversified
caratterizzato
world, a
sicuramente,
very
che è
broad
cresciuto
world
nel
which has
tempo. Il telecomando
grown a lot
funziona,
over
andiamo
time.
avanti lo stesso.
My remote does not
Questa è
work.
una home
So
page
this
di
is
un
the
sito,
home page of a website, Siti
che
Cattolici
ha
in Italia
cominciato a in
.it,
qualche
which
modo registrare
started
questa
to
presenza
register this presence of
in lingue italiane. Ci
Catholic
sono tante
inspiration sites in
difficoltà
Italian
perché
language. There
dobbiamo
are
riconoscere come
several
è difficile
difficulties. We have to
riconoscere un sito cattolico
understand how to
da un
recognize a
sito
Catholic
non lo è.
site
Ma a parte questo vi chiedo una curiosità,
and
secondo
differentiate
voi
it
quanti
from a site
sono
which is
i
not
siti
Catholic.
cattolici in
In your
Italia?
opinion, how
Un
many
numero?
Catholic sites are there in Italy? Just give me a number.
65.
65? More?
Quanti?
1000? How many?
200?
200?
Chi offre di più? 360. Allora,
360?
si
Okay.
stima che
Well,
in Italia
actually, we
siti di diversità
estimate that in
cattolica,
Italy,
le
the
lingue
Catholic
italiane, siano
inspiration
circa
site in Italian
16.000.
language account
16.000. E
for
questo è un numero che è
16,000.
cresciuto in
And
maniera
this is a
esponenziale negli
number
anni,
which grew
ma
exponentially over the
come
year,
diciamo così, oggi
and it
moltiplica le
found
diverse, cioè non
new
soltanto una
challenges,
presenza
not
quantitativa,
only
ma
a
molteplica
quantitative
anche
presence, but
quello
also
positivo.
qualitative
In altre
presence, as we
parole,
will see
l'obiettivo,
shortly. In
l'obiettivo di
other
questo
words,
percorso non può
the
essere,
objective
perdonatemi
of this
l'espressione,
journey
quello
cannot
di
be
ambire
that
a
of
piastrellare il web
aiming
di
at
Catholici. Significa
um,
invece guardare
filling the web
al
with Catholic sites.
mettere in pratica
Rather, it
un
is
messaggio
to
missionario
implement
mondiale senza precedenti.
a
E questo è
missionary action
il
in this
sito,
continent to
naturalmente il
evangelize.
sito ufficiale
The
Bolzetta,
official website of the
trovato,
Holy
nato
See
proprio nella metà
was
degli anni
created
90,
in the
in cui
mid
ecco,
90s.
in Italia, come
In Italy,
vedete, vi è un doppio cammino
there is
che
a
è cominciato a
double
fiorire, a
journey.
moltiplicarsi i siti di
So,
ispirazione
a
cattolica
multiplication
perché
of
si
Catholic
decide
inspiration
di
sites
spaccare la soglia delle nuove
takes place
tecnologie. Ed
from
è
those who
proprio la
decide to use new
dalla
technologies,
Chiesa in Italia che
and is
ha
encouraged by the Church in Italy,
promosso
which
un cammino di
promoted
riflessione
a
supportato da convegni
reflection
come può
journey
essere uno di
characterized
questo, in
by
presenza, in
conferences,
cui
encounters
si
like this one
chiedeva
in presence,
come la Chiesa
where
potesse essere
they
presente
were
anche
wondering how the
questo
church could
percorso
be
è
present
continuato,
also in the
è
church.
evoluto
It is a
e
journey which
come dire,
continued,
mette
which
in
evolved,
pratica molti,
and which
diciamo così,
implements
aspetti e principi di
several
questo
aspects and
pontificato promosso
principles which
che
also
possiamo
this
ricordare nell'espressione
papacy
della
promoted and
Chiesa,
we
il
can
cammino
recall
della
in the
Chiesa.
expression of
Inizio.
the church
Magistero,
in
conoscete
journey.
ieri Cecilia ha ricordato tanti
The
documenti,
magistry, well,
sicuramente quelli che lei
last
ha
night
citato. Da, ricordiamo,
I
Chiesa
checked,
Chiesa
so
in
at
Internet,
the
a tutti
church
i
and internet,
messaggi che
ethics and
vengono dalla Giornata
internet,
Mondiale delle
the different messages for the social communication World Day. So I went to rediscover them, to read them, and they are very interesting and current. Very often, I'm among professionals of information and communication, and they recognize great importance to these messages. One, and then the pastoral reflection on the involvement with social media verso una nuova presenza, towards a new presence, which is a very useful tool for our commitment, but how to walk, how to navigate this digital environment in a very practical way. I understand you. We spoke about this also during the breaks. It doesn't always happen to be understood in our commitment, in the commitment that each one of us implements often in the digital world, because it is considered a prejudice, something secondary, something less important. We have to be clear, nothing. The promotion of a digital pastoral doesn't want to replace the physical encounter. Today, the challenge is that one, is to consider technologies as something which generates relationships. Today, 2024, we have spoken about artificial intelligence. We will keep talking about artificial intelligence. We know that we still have some doubts. We don't know whether to use it or not, whether to be enthusiastic or not. But as in the pastoral reflection we read, the issue is not to confront oneself or not with the digital world, but how to do that. And this is the question we have to raise today. So, the secretary for the Dicastery of Communication was here today with us. I've spoken about this. So, the digital, as we recalled also the definition of Luciano Flori, so an environment where we are all present. It is not a matter of generation. Everybody is involved. So we can recognize the digital as a sixth continent which has to be evangelized. So if we start from this principle, we can follow the footprint of several missionaries. I'm thinking of the concern of Francesco Saveri, the patron of missionaries, the curiosity of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. So, an outgoing church, and at the general hearing of 2023, in a time that does not help us to have a religious look on life in different places, we can be tempted to give up from the pastoral service. And on the contrary, as Pope Francis said, the pastoral creativity, being audacious in spirit, is a test of loyalty. So we choose to practice the force of the first announcement. It is a journey which requires a great education, technical education, integral education from a communicative point of view, but also missionary point of view. So it means, yesterday we were talking about authenticity, about not disguising ourselves. A book by the Archbishop of Ajaccio, he said We need to be
C'è una definizione che è quella di
witnesses.
missionari
So now there
digitali,
is a definition of digital
come ad esempio
missionaries.
sicuramente colonna. Si tratta di un insieme di
It is a set of
comunicatori
people,
che hanno scelto
communicators,
di essere
that have chosen
impegnati con
to be
fede anche
committed
nelle reti.
with
E questo
faith
mettendo in pratica
and
quelle direttrici
by
che Papa
practicing.
Francesco
This is done by
viene più
practicing
volte a
the
ricalcare, quelle di una chiesa
the
in
indications,
arrivo e in uscita.
the
Il
indications
messaggio
of
per la giornata
a
mondiale
now
della
going
comunicazione sociale viene
church.
corretto anche con
And he
attraverso
also,
cioè
Pope Francis also
questo
reminded us of how to do that. These tools are potential channels.
dunque
We need to practice
un qualcosa che
listening
non è
and
soltanto
encounter. It
ideale,
is something
ma
which is not
parlando di digitale
ideal.
ha
But
dimostrato di
while talking about
essere presente.
digital,
E quindi
well,
questa realtà
it has
legata
demonstrated
a
that
quella
we
che è
can
l'ascolto,
physically
è
meet.
nata proprio
So
per far conoscere il
a
sinodo
listening church,
pontificale, dunque anche
which was
lavoro attraverso
developed in order to develop
come
the
dire, un
synod,
riconoscimento
and so it
tanto
had
dell'avere
a
promosso
recognition, and
proprio nel sinodo
in
e
the synod
dopo che, come dire, ha
it
avuto una
found a
partecipazione
place.
così
It
ampia,
found a
dunque
very
essere
broad
digital
participation,
synod
and it was
ho
defined
capito dunque che
as the
non è
digital synod.
soltanto
So it is a journey
virtuale,
that is not
qualcosa che
only
cerca di ridurre il
virtual,
contrasto ormai superato tra virtuale e reale, ma che
but
promuove una presenza. E questo
something
ha fatto
which
sì che tra gli
promotes a
incontri che ci
presence.
sono stati,
And so, among the
a
encounters
Roma, sono stato in altro,
in Lisbon, but
erano
also in
proprio
Rome,
i valori come per esempio quelli
to
dell'Eucaristia,
promote values such as the
l'incontro
values of
organizzato con
fraternity,
Human Fraternity
the
del
world meeting
nostro
on human
paese,
fraternity promoted
ha
by
messo
the
insieme
Foundation
più di
Fratelli
100
Tutti,
partecipanti da tutto il mondo,
200 participants
di cui
from all over the
30
world.
erano
Out of
premi
200
Nobel
people,
e
30 were
50 erano
Nobel Prize
missionari digitali.
winners, and the rest
Uno dei
digital
punti chiave
missionaries
per
committed in one of the
un mondo
12
più pace. Vedete
roundtables
come
for
dire,
a
questo
world of
lavoro
peace and the
concreto,
human
non
world.
solo
So,
di
this is a
teoria, non solo di
concrete
riflessione,
work, not
ma
only based on
molta
theory and reflection,
soprattutto
but
con una
very
vocazione
practice
internazionale che
work
dire,
with an
non
international vocation,
sia
which
eclesiale, non internazionale, ma universale. Ed è un cammino
is universal. So it
che
is a
vedrà il
journey
prossimo
which
anno.
is ongoing, and
Paola mi sa che
next
di
year,
tornarci mi sa tra poco.
are you thinking of coming back to Rome? While if I'm thinking of
Nel
2025, of course,
giubileo,
because of course there will
all'interno
be the
degli eventi
Jubilee,
del giubileo,
but
ecco,
within
sempre
the
così,
appointments
e
of
ci
the
sarà
Jubilee, there
penso
will
che
be
veramente
also
molto importante
a
per chi è
very
impegnato in
important
questo
moment for
ambiente,
those who are
quello
committed in this
del
field,
giubileo dei missionari
that of the
digitali
Jubilee
e
of the digital missionaries
influencer.
and Catholic
L'appuntamento sarà
influencers.
quello della
The
28
appointment
e 29 giugno di
is
quest'anno.
going to take place on the
Anche questo è un
28th and
dato rilievo,
29th of
certo,
July
dove si
2025.
riconosce
I must not
l'importanza storica
highlight
di
this, but
questo
I have
riconoscimento,
to
di questo
recognize a
evento, di questo
historical importance
appuntamento.
to the
La
recognition
cultura
of this
digitale,
event,
come si
this
legge
appointment.
nel capitolo 17
So, the digital culture,
dedicato
as we read in
all'anno
chapter 17, dedicated to digital
e
missionaries,
sintesi
in the synthesis report
ordinaria
of the
La cultura
Ordinary
digitale
Assembly
è
of
pertanto
the
un'area
Bishop Synod,
distinta della
the digital
missione
culture is
quanto
not
dimensione
a
cruciale
separate area
della
of the mission, but a
testimonianza
crucial
nella chiesa della
dimension
cultura
of the testimony of the
contemporanea. Per
Church
questo
in a
riveste
contemporary
un
culture.
significato
For this
particolare
reason, it
in una
has
chiesa
a very special
synodale, che è
meaning
comunque
in a
la
synod
nuova
church.
frontiera
This is
missionaria.
the new
Riguarda tutti
missionary
noi, riguarda
frontier,
tanta
and it
gente che
concerns
voi
all of you. It
rappresentate.
concerns the
Penso
80
a
countries you represent.
all'energia,
I'm
ai
thinking of
progetti, alle
energy,
idee anche
projects,
nella rete
ideas
con cui si è
in the
creato
network which
veramente
has
sotto
been
il
established
carisma
here
salesiano e che
under the
ogni
Salesian
volta porta questa
charisma.
attenzione anche
Bring all
digitale.
this attention
Terminerò
also to the
con una
digital
proposta molto
environment,
concreta
and I
per
will conclude
invitarvi
with a
in
very
presenza,
concrete
ma non
proposal
smetto
which
sperando.
concern you,
Andiamo
but
all'intelligenza
this will
artificiale
come
perché non
later.
c'è un
So
convegno
let's
che non
talk about
dica che
artificial
cosa ne è
intelligence,
stata
because
fatta. Ne abbiamo
today
parlato oggi.
every
Come
conference
curiosità,
talks about
qualcuno
artificial
ricorda
intelligence.
quando è stata introdotta
Does anybody
questa
recall when it was
definizione?
introduced for the first
Quando
time?
nasce
When
l'espressione
this
intelligenza
expression
artificiale?
was
Chi
introduced
è?
for the first time? Do you remember the year?
Sento un po' di più? 2000, non so.
2000.
Quasi, vediamo. Allora, eccola qua. 1956.
1956.
Che viene fatto in un testo di
According to what we read in a text by Luciano Floridi, this is the definition introduced by American researchers of the Dartmouth College of Hanover for two reasons. They wanted to find an expression which could
l'entusiasmo di una
enhance some enthusiasm towards the field of research which was not so attractive, and then they wanted to find a winning expression that could also gain investments. There are several clues to recognize, and we can do this in the future, but especially today, of how 2024 is a year of reflection for the church in the field of communication dedicated to artificial intelligence. This is the year. It started on the 1st of January with the celebration of the Peace World Day, and the message was dedicated to the relation of artificial intelligence with peace. So we know about the celebration of the Social Communication World Day. I believe that it is an extremely rare case. Two messages of the Pope in the same year dedicated to the same topic. Some images I was recording yesterday and which have traveled the world. This was not generated by artificial intelligence. It is a true image because this guy dressed like Spider-Man, bringing with him an incredible story. The president, Italian president, appointed him Cavaliere della Repubblica because he tried to bring some smiles in the cancer units of the hospitals. I still recall the historical participation of Pope Francis in the G7 session dedicated to artificial intelligence. But why should the church deal with artificial intelligence? This is a video which, with the WIG Association, we developed together with the Dicastery for the Service of Human and Integral Development. It has been produced on the occasion of the presentation of the message of the Pope for the Peace World Day. The church is interested in everything which is human. Everything which is human concerns the church, and so the church must be interested in artificial intelligence because the development of technologies is accompanying us, and it is important to be in this dialogue.
Seems to be more powerful than our human capacity to direct and manage them.
The new technologies and AI are used more and more by several advanced economies for the economic development. This opens endless applications in different fields with cooperation possibilities at international level, but also conflicts.
Invention, if it's a human product, then it should also be under our ethical and political and finally spiritual control.
Sono diversi gli ambiti in cui l'intelligenza artificiale.
There are different fields where AI can have conflictual consequences and endanger peace and social coexistence. Let's think of their impact on safety, security, employment, healthcare. What will be their war use? For sure, On one end, they can be a resource, for example, in the education field or technologies applied to agriculture, the monitoring of cultures. On the other end, there are several risks, which are great risks and at the same time complex risks. In their data collection, they can worsen some social prejudices. They can act as discrimination factors, both racial and cultural discrimination.
So the problems with artificial intelligences in relationship to social justice bring us back to the basic problems of how we care for each other and how we care for our common whole.
Le intelligenze artificiali sono una tecnologia che racchiude in sé un grande potenziale. La loro applicazione
Artificial intelligence have a great potential. They their application will depend on the responsible use, and those who deal with human development for everybody, justice, peace, cannot not deal with the AI. Not only and not much for all the ethical matters, but we must also refer to anthropological questions, political issues, the coexistence among peoples. That's why I believe that it is very important that the Holy Father focuses on these points. I believe it is also a prophetic sign of this Pope to be able to look beyond the present and to identify what in our future can represent an open conflict area. We have to take into account the fact that a technological development can set the basis to lead to an improvement for the humankind or not. That's why we must be there.
Per questo è importante che
That's why it is important that we are there. We must be there. So the church
rappresenta una delle voci più
represents one of the most authoritative voices in this. We have to be proud. Uh, the the church is us. We are the church, and so if we look
vogliamo dire,
at
c'è
a journey from the top, there is another horizontal look which concerns the individual commitment of each one of us. And here I'd like to describe an initiative which has to do
attiviamo le antenne anche con la proposta
with the proposal that I will give at the end of my speech. I introduce you the
che rappresenta
Associazione Web Cattolici Italiani, so Italian Web Catholic Association, WICA. Its story
Master Cattolici Italiani.
is the Association of the Italian Web Masters. This term is no longer used, has evolved, and it is a reality which was established more than 20 years ago from the bottom. So some webmasters gathered in a conference and they asked the Episcopal Italian Conference, some association that could accompany them, and so some founding members, including the Catholic University in Milan, the Diocese of Rome, Archdiocese of Città della Pieve, developed this reality which grew over time and which which has always been at the service. And over the years, it found several formulas, on-site education, online education, seminars in dioceses, archdioceses for an integral education and training, not only technical training. We have almost 200 tutorials, a 5-minute video every Wednesday published on the website of Wika, which deal with these topics also from a very practical point of view, because we have to put ourselves in the shoes of, I don't know, the priest of a small town who has a lot of commitments, including the updating the website, or a communication team, or youth pastoral, etc. There are also very practical problems. So let's think of all the sensitive data which a priest has on his phone. And so, how can we avoid these problems? How can we prevent hacking? And then communication tools, digital tools. If I think of the religious life, I'm thinking of instruments which we can retrieve. Of course, the newsletters. It is, of course, not everybody is so much involved in the digital culture, but of course, there are new or old instruments which can be used and improved. Let's think of the newsletter, for example, how to manage the newsletter of a parish, which can go next to a magazine, or how we can think of how to tell about an important day to all the households. And so, how, thanks to the support of everybody, a project is being implemented. The lack of appropriate education, appropriate training, leads to a situation in which a post can better work when we post a photo, an image. I look for it, I put it on Google, and then the copyrights belong to whom? There are problems, because there are some realities. This happened in Italy and beyond. So some realities received requests of money just because they used images for which they didn't have the copyright. And very often there are some misunderstandings. For example, we think that one image, an image of a celebration, an image where there are priests, doesn't have any copyright, but this is not the case. And so there are several resources that we try to share and to make everybody know. Of course, we are nobody, we don't have the authority, nor we cannot tell a priest what they can publish on Facebook. But several priests wrote us and said, "What can we publish?" And so we worked in team, and we tried to put together some recommendations and guidelines, and the video format helps a lot. So we experienced a very complex, a very difficult time, the pandemic time. So we stopped during the pandemic, and we wondered, was it useful to continue with these instruments in a time that was so complex and so difficult? And so we transformed the weekly tutorials into webinars, during which we connected with some of the most um, some of the communities which were hit the most, the first lockdown areas in Italy, in order to understand how how the digital technologies were supporting them to keep the relations. Because we can state that the digital has played a very important role on this, because it allowed the church, that has always been respectful for the physical distancing, has always ensured proximity at the same time. And so during those months, we met some of the people, such as Alberto Mayane, social priest in Italy, who started to create these videos, or many other models that we started to circulate. Training, as I said, because this world evolves continuously, and so a technical preparation is fundamental, but these resources can be useful for the pastoral. And so from this training work, we selected some tutorials. So we produced them in video format. Then in 2018, we transformed them into audio podcast, and then we wondered for that specific target of priests or educators who are at ease in browsing a book rather than tapping on a screen. What kind of proposal can we make? And so we decided to develop a book, La Chiesa nel digitale, the church in the digital world, and which had the honor of having the preface by Pope Francis. It deals with how the pandemic, from a communication point of view, led to a need for education and training. There were some extremes, but these words are very important. We know that the virtual can never replace the beauty of physical encounters, but the digital world is inhabited by Christians.
There's a QR code on the cover of the book. The challenge was talking about the virtual context within an actual book. So the QR code updates the book's contents. To do so, we have set up a website containing the 200 tutorials. You can also listen to them in your language that is automatically translated by YouTube. And such contents are always updated. We also designed an algorithm that allows you to introduce yourself. I'm a clergyman, I'm a religious woman, I'm a trainer, and these tools will deliver a series of results. This is a quote from the Digital Missionaries document that reads like that. Many youngsters in their pursuit for beauty have abandoned physical spaces provided by the church, and we strongly invite them to get back to the physical spaces of the church. So we invite religious men and women to reach out for the youth, and in doing so they should find new ways to engage them throughout formation and the catechesis.
Dunque la rilancio da qui a voi che rappresentate 80 paesi.
I'm going to launch my proposal from here in front of an audience coming from all the corners of the world.
In italiano c'è un detto
In Italian, there's a saying that basically says that regardless of the amount of tools you have, you always have to try to do the best, to give your best with the tools available. So my question for you is, isn't it the right time to be a network within a network, even in your countries of origin? So why don't you come up with a proposal to bring together all communication experts that are committed in the digital world in order to generate a network that will result into a formula. You may start up with a WhatsApp group and a series of meetings.
Ambire a guadagnarsi lo statuto di
You may
un'associazione
even
che riunisca
try to become an association bringing together digital communication experts, so religious men and women who work in communication. Let's just think about the extraordinary network you might create in such a way.
allargarsi e anche da voi farvi tornare a casa con una proposta concreta.
I believe that this is a suggestion that may be translated by you into a concrete proposal. Please let us know whether this proposal has been welcomed by your community and whether you have achieved something from this viewpoint.
Nel quale non hanno creduto, come crederanno in colui del quale non hanno sentito
St. Paul said,
come ne sentiranno parlare?
how are we going to invoke somebody you haven't believed it? How are you going to believe in somebody you haven't heard speaking about? How are you gonna, how are they going to hear about this person without somebody telling them about God? Thank you very much for it. Where we are receiving questions. Up until now, we have received 10 questions. So we have to fix all the problems of the world in 15, 20 minutes. First question. The first missionaries went to different countries of the world to evangelize, and they created several Christian communities. How can we create communities according to the style of the first missionaries in the digital world? This is a beautiful question.
Soprattutto all'autenticità.
And I am thinking about authenticity, first of all,
Della testimonianza. Ecco, io penso che la parola
and the importance of
testimonia anche nel digitale. E ciascuno
being witnesses in the digital world.
di tante competenze diverse.
We are bearers of uniqueness and of a uniqueness that can be shared online.
Esistano dei mezzi ed un linguaggio che evidentemente sono chiave anche per far passare un messaggio in questo.
Yesterday, you've seen all the tools available to pass on a message in this field. However, I believe that the key to reach the heart of our audience, of an audience that is listening to our rather smartphone, is the power of our is the power of our experience, of our authenticity, of how you experience the church.
Bellissima occasione di formazione alla ricchezza che c'è proprio nelle vostre storie, nelle vostre
You should think about the richness of your experiences, and I believe that much can be done by looking at good practices. So, to answer your question, we will have to get back to the essence, to the value of the experiences and the authenticity of the content of faith that we want to share in the digital world. The issue is not about identifying these platforms or the digital world as a tool. We have to acknowledge that these tools, that the digital tools, are parts of the digital culture. And I believe that that's the right way forward for communication experts. I would like to add up that it's not only about tools, it is also about spaces. Just to mention the words of Pope Francis. For us, a parish and then is a space. So the digital world is another space. There are small virtual groups. There is communication counseling, and I believe that these elements are new forms of evangelization within the church. But I believe that they are getting more and more virtual and less physical. I believe that the church. Do you believe that the church should penetrate this field, or that it should stay aside? I believe that the church should accompany these new forms of prayer. Thank you for this question. This question allows me to say something about online celebrations during the pandemic. We've seen the creation of a plethora of online celebrations, online masses. And I can say that thanks to this tool, when churches were closed, people could actually attend a mass. However, it was an extraordinary moment, and we should never forget that these contexts are places to promote the communion. The Mass is, of course, something you cannot give up to. So you should not be absent, of course, from this digital context. However, we need people to accompany, to steward people within this context. So there's a need for a key to understand where the boundaries are. What is the perception of digital missionaries by the ecclesial hierarchies? I can't really tell you, but I can give you my view. We always have to remember that the synodal time we are experiencing has been acknowledged by the digital world as a space to reach out for the faithful, for a great number of faithful. It was even defined as the digital synod. People who carried out this work know perfectly well what the risks are. The ecclesial hierarchy may have some may be slightly diffident, but we should get out from this feeling of diffidence. It's not only about the hierarchies, it may be also due to the generation. And in order to overcome them, you should communicate the importance of the work you do as digital missionaries by speaking about the positive effects your action entails. The Catholic presence in the digital world is not something that is detached from the higher hierarchies. It is one part of the world we live in. There are people who perhaps do not have access to a religious recreation center, but perhaps they can find an open door in the digital world, and it is our task to keep those doors open. Many people don't physically enter into the Catholic recreational centers, actually. How can the Church balance the use of new communication tools for the evangelization without depriving the religious world of the spirit of its spiritual message? Well, there are several elements that should be taken into account. Of course, there's a limit that should be acknowledged. Sister Xiskya yesterday mentioned that we have to acknowledge the risks and the opportunities. Let's just think about how short a tweet was at the beginning, even though now it can be longer in terms of characters. Well, short tweets, short posts are not good for elaborated reflections. Because the topics the church deals with require thoughts, reasoning, debates, so they do not actually fit certain social networks. However, a specific set of characters could also be a verse of the Bible. At university, I tell my students that writing less means also writing better. Therefore, we have to tell our people to be good communicators. They should not dilute a message. They have to make the message more effective. Anyway, we can't look at communication only from the point of view of profile on social networks or about what we can update on the social network. We should look at ecclesial communication as a wider project that includes different tools. Therefore, post may catch the attention about the topic as well as a reel could do. However, that's not it. It is just a point of access to a set of different tools to understand certain topics. We may also focus on algorithms. I question myself about the way algorithms have when advertising or giving more visibility to certain messages. We've had posts that were blocked by Meta. They were posts about formation because they were accused of being violent. We had to file an online claim, and after a certain amount of time, Meta gave us a positive opinion. There's another point I'd like to make, which is about the space and the performances of our posts. Moreover, at the moment, we are already adjusting our messages to the algorithm. Let me explain it. The most important platforms are telling us that Reels are the most effective tool, so we're not posting any longer. We are only doing Reels, and this way forward should lead us to think about the way we want to communicate, especially considering the space and the modes we're allowed to by these social networks. These are risks, of course, but by attitude, I also look for, always look for opportunities. Another question. I'm quite positive about Fabio's proposal. So these days here, we may look for the right way forward. What do you think about that? Well, I totally agree with you, and I'm available to share the journey our association went through. So if you want to do it, I suggest we meet up soon, because we as a community, we can share the challenges we went through and the elements that allowed us to grow. So we're here for you, and I really believe that creating networks within networks is extremely important. Missionaries must be accountable for the community they were missionaries must be accountable for their community of origin. Who should digital missionaries be accountable for? Who should they report to? Well, in the Catholic world, quite often we see isolated islands instead of instead of archipelagos. So, considering it, we should try to work more together. I discourage solidarity organizations. So you cannot be disconnected because we're all connected, and that's why I believe that it is important to be accountable and to avoid perceiving an online space as a personal bubble. Therefore, we must keep our doors open. We must build buildings, bridges, and it is your task to decide how to do it and to analyze all different proposals and share them in order for people around you to share the digital journey with you. We have one last question. What are the most significant examples of digital innovation that had an actual impact on the spreading of the church message, and how can we measure the significance of these initiatives in involving new generations? These are very open questions. In the first half of the 90s, the Catholic websites were websites that were not institutional. They were just trying to transfer the words of God. And this is how it all started. Nowadays, we have the possibility to promote the generation of relationships. So if I think about it, I always think about bridges. There are several variables, of course. It depends on the scope of our commitment, and depends on your role. It depends on your context, whether you work in formation, for example, and it depends on the tools available. Anyway, when it comes to education, I'd like to say something in connection with the youth. We have to involve the youth, but we really have to do it. We should believe in the youth. And I don't want these words to sound void or to seem void. And another important thing is that we do not exploit their skills. It is important to involve them in a project, in different projects. Quite often, some parishes had these youngsters who were very good with the internet, and they were tasked with updating the website and the social networks, and they were left by themselves. Of course, there are hierarchies, but when tasking youngsters with some tasks, there must be an actual project, and there should be a member of this project. The projects must be designed together. These initiatives already exist, and I believe that youngsters should be involved within this project. By doing so, we know that we should keep involving them, otherwise we just lose them. If we exploit their skills because we need the website to be updated and then we forget about that and we leave them there, they end up abandoning the religious context. Thank you very much for it. Well, I'll see you in half an hour for lunch at 1. Thank you.